In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to use the inline social sharing buttons with Monarch. The inline social sharing buttons appear above or below or above and below your content in a post or page or any custom post type that you have enabled. Here's an example of a blog post with the inline buttons enabled. You can see them here. And I have them enabled above and below the post, so they get automatically added before and after your content. To enable the buttons, first going to want to go to the Monarch settings panel, so go to Tools, Monarch Settings, and the first page you're greeted with here is the Manage Locations page, where you can manage all the different social sharing locations, and the one we're going to explore today is Inline, so I'm going to click the Inline location. You get the green check mark, which means you've enabled that location. After you've enabled it, you want to go ahead and click on the Inline Social Sharing tab here to get a list of all the settings for your inline sharing buttons. We have various options here. Icon style, which affects the hover animation, icon shape, and various display settings, color settings, and also location settings, where you can just choose which custom post type the social sharing buttons appear on. So let's play with some of these settings to give you an idea of what they do. First off is the icon style, which affects the animation, and you can just hover over these different options here to see the different animation choices, and then once you've found one you like, just click on it to select it. You can also choose your icon shape. So previously you saw me using the rounded rectangle version, but we can also use a non-rounded rectangle or a circle. So I'm going to try the circle option to see what that looks like. And then you can also choose where the icons appear, either above or below the post. So I have it at the moment above and below, but let's try changing it to just above content and click Save. So refresh the page, and we're going to have some circle icons above the content only. And there you go. The animation is also changed. It's a simple darken on hover animation. All right, let's go back to the settings and check out the rest that we have here. So the next setting is icon alignment. First, I'm going to go back to my rounded rectangle I had originally. And then on icon alignment, this affects where the icon is aligned within the allotted space for the button. It can be either to the left or centered. So let's try centering it. And this is going to center both the icon and the text if you have network names enabled. So here you can see both the icon and the network label have been centered, and they've been placed on top of each other. So this usually produces a bit larger of a button, which is useful if you have a smaller amount of networks, especially. If you have a bunch of networks enabled, then and it's creating multiple rows and you have the centered option enabled, it can definitely get a little overwhelming. So you can play with the setting and kind of choose whatever works best for you. All right, next up is the number of columns. You can adjust how many columns appear. Right now, you can see we have 4 columns, which I chose because I only had 4 networks enabled. But let's try changing it to 2 columns. There we go, it changes it to 2, which in this case makes the buttons a lot bigger. So this might be useful if you only had 2 to 4 networks enabled, like we have here. And if you have, let's say you had 2 columns enabled and you thought, oh man, it's getting like really, really big with those 4 buttons, we could take off that center alignment, put it back to left, which will make the buttons a bit smaller, a bit less aggressive. And so yeah, you can see you can kind of play with these settings to get a result that works best for you and your content. So I'm going to put this back to 4. Now we have the option to display share counts. This will display the amount of times that your post has been shared. So if you click this, enable this, you're just going to get a share count right next to the icon or the network name. Now you can also choose a minimum display count. This is a threshold that the shares have to reach in order for the number to be displayed. So for example, if you have a new blog and you don't have that many shares on your blog, you might not want to display share counts. If all of your posts have 1, 2, or even 0 shares, you might not want to place that number 0 there. It might actually work against you when people see that no one's been sharing your posts, which in your case isn't to say anything bad about the quality of your content, but just that you're new, you're starting out, you don't have that much traffic yet. So you might want to change this to, let's say, 30. What this would do, for example, we have one post, it got 35 shares on Facebook, but it got 0 shares everywhere else. Instead of displaying 30,000, it would just display 30 for Facebook and leave the rest blank, which I think is a better result than having a bunch of zeros. So you can play with that setting as you like. In our case, since I'm working on localhost, we don't actually have any shares, I'm just going to set it to 0 so you can see what the share count looks like. I'm going to refresh. There you can see the share count is in place right next to the network name. Speaking of network names, those can be enabled and disabled as well. So you see the network name setting here. You can disable that and save, and that's going to take off the network name. And I'm just going to have a share count and an icon. Next up is the display total shares. So this is going to, if you enable this, it's going to tally up all the shares that you have from all the networks enabled and display a total share count above your buttons. You can also choose the color that's used for this. So if you want it to be light or dark, you can have this color option here. Since this text is being placed outside of the buttons, it's therefore being placed on top of the background color of your theme. So depending on what kind of theme you're using, if it has a dark background color or a light background color, you're going to want to adjust the text accordingly. Since we have a white background, I'm going to choose dark for the text color so that it shows up nicely. Okay, let's try that. As mentioned, I have 0 shares, so the tally is actually 0. But in your case, you're going to have some shares in your page, and those are all going to be tallied up, and you're going to have a total share count here that represents the total shares of all your networks. Next up is the remove icon spacing option. So this is a different style you can use. It's going to remove the spaces between each of these and kind of create one big block of buttons. So let's try enabling that to see what it looks like. There we go. It's kind of placed them all in a row here. It's just, it's all up to your personal taste, whatever you like better. I think this effect gets especially cool when you have multiple rows of icons as well. And finally, you have the hide on mobile devices option. So if you have a lot of locations enabled, let's say you have the floating sidebar enabled and you have inline enabled, you might want to hide one of those on mobile just to use one of them, because like all these sharing buttons can get a little bit overwhelming on mobile. It's not really necessary to have so many of them, so you can hide them and just maybe have one enabled if you please. So yeah, that's what that option is for. Finally, we have our color settings. So by default, all the network buttons adhere to the network colors that they represent. Facebook's going to be blue, Twitter's going to be a lighter blue, Google Plus is going to be, their signature red, and so on. But if you want to change those, if you think this kind of rainbow effect is kind of hurting your design, you don't like it, it's too glaring, well then you can use custom colors and adjust the color of all your buttons. So you select the use custom colors option, and then you can adjust all these different options accordingly. Background color, let's change that to red to see what that looks like. And let's change the hover color to orange and click save. There you go. Goes from red to orange. And you can adjust the hover color and the color of the text and the icon as well. So there's 4 different settings here. Finally, your post type settings. This is where you choose where you want these buttons to appear based on the custom post types that your website has enabled. So by default, WordPress comes with 2 custom post types, that's posts and pages. But depending on which theme you have enabled or which plugins you have enabled, you might have additional post types as well. For example, we have Divi theme enabled, which comes with a project post type that we use for our portfolio module and our portfolio system. You might have WooCommerce enabled, for example. They register a product post type. And so you can kind of pick and choose where you want those buttons to be displayed. You can select them all or just select one of them, and so on. So for example, I have posts and pages enabled. If I were to deselect this post option, go over here to this post and refresh, it disappears. But I have pages enabled, so if we go over to our test page, we see them right here. And that is a basic overview of the inline sharing buttons with Monarch.